Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. Today we're looking at the SIG 550 series. And what we have here is the SIG 556. The SIG 556 was really the end of an era. We go back in time to the early SIG 510, and was being replaced by the SIG 540, and the SIG 540 eventually becoming the SIG 550 series. Two completely different types of assault rifles. One was a much more longer range, and then the SIG 540 was more of a intermediate caliber, 5.56 millimeter. In fact, it was Switzerland's first 5.56 millimeter caliber rifle. It was adopted in the 1977, developed during the early 70s. Basically what the SIG 540 encompassed was a long stroke piston. What was very different about the rifle was instead of the recoil spring being traditionally in the rear of the rifle, it was part of the operating rod. So everything was forward of the rifle instead of in back. So when you had your stock, you could have a stock that would side fold. It could be telescopic or whatever. It utilized an AK bolt for the most part with a long stroke type operating system. The SIG 450 had a adjustable gas system. You had a position mark 0, which was for launch rifle grenades, and you had 1 for normal and 2 for extreme conditions. The safety was a 4 position. It was safe, S for safe, 1 for semi, 3 for 3-round burst, and 20 for full auto. Had a flash hider and a proprietary magazine that held 20 to 30 rounds. Now, the stock was both fixed and side folding. You had a polymer stock, a handguard grip. Well, then around 1990 came the SIG 550, and the SIG 550 became probably one of the most well-known SIG rifles. It served actually right up to present. It's still in service in Switzerland. Now, very few of these came into the U.S. as semi-automatic only guns, but there were some very important changes that were made in the SIG 550 series. Manufactured in 1986, adopted by the Swiss in 1990. They were side-folding stock. It had bipod and polymer magazines. You had night sights on the front, a folding flip-up night sight. You had a bolt catch on this one versus the other one didn't. The flash hider was also an integral part of the barrel. You had a diopter rear sight similar to that of the HK 91 series or HK G3 series. And this would go on, as I said, to this day to be in service. Now, for as far as the commercial variants, they were very rare, and if you still find any, they're extremely expensive. You're looking up from $5,000 up to $11,000 that I've seen some of the commercial versions for because they were that rare. And we also had another rather negative issue that came into play was the assault weapon ban, and prior to that, the importation ban that was put in place. Unfortunately, the importation ban put in many guns that were rarely made for the commercial market, no longer in the country, such as the HK series firearms, of course the SIG, and Beretta. There were several semi-automatic rifles that were affected by that. And the only way that was ever gotten around was to have a company set up over in the United States that would make parts that would make the rifle 922R compatible. Well, unfortunately, the SIG 550 series, there was never any product process set up, even when SIG Arms opened up their doors to manufacture the SIG 550 here in the United States. And for the most part, it was rather outdated by more modern standards for as far as the ability to mount optics and rail systems and so forth. So now we're going to go forward to the adoption of the SIG 556. Now, the SIG 556 is what you see here. This was developed for many reasons. First and foremost, this was a gun that was manufactured in the United States. It kept a lot of the features of the SIG 550 series, for instance, the operating mechanism, types of stocks you had, but there were some parts that were made in the United States, so this would be compliant with 922R. The rifle was basically made here in the United States. Now, the rifle that we see here is slightly modified from the original one. I want to thank one of our viewers for sending this one into us so we can take a look. I had contacted SIG quite some time ago about wanting to review one of these, and they told me, well, we don't make them anymore, so why would you want to see that? I said, well, there's a lot of these out there in the market. People still want to know about them, but they didn't even have any left in their marketing crib to even send me, so I haven't had one. I've reviewed these before for Small Arms Review. And I was certainly very pleased with the ones that I had back then. The rifle is certainly a very well-made rifle. This rifle is a SIG 556 SWAT. Now, the difference is this has a Midwest Industries rail that was put on, so this is not the way this rifle originally came. You're going to see a photograph of the original SIG 550 Classic SWAT coming up, so you'll be able to see what the differences are. The main difference is the handguard itself. Everything else is pretty much the same. Now, we do have a SIG optic on here also. I want to point out this is the 1.5 to 6. So what we have here is an entire SIG weapons platform. We had the SIG rifle, the SIG optic, SIG magazines, and the SIG ammunition, both the 55 grain full metal jacket and the 77 grain open tip match ammunition. So we're going to go over the different models. First one we had was a SIG 556 Classic. That one had a polymer set of handguards very similar to that of the original SIG 550 series. It had 1913 rail on the top, and of course the handguards were the original SIG 550. We go to the SIG 556 Patrol. Patrol basically was a very similar rifle, except it also had the polymer handguards, but it was a much smaller handguard, so you had more of the barrel exposed versus the SIG 556 Classic. And now this SIG 556 SWAT, which is the gun that you see here. The rail system was different. You still had quad 1913 rails, but it was a little bit different from the one that you see here, because you're going to see a photograph of it to get it a little bit more. The SIG 556 Classic SWAT was probably the most popular of all the rifles. I know it was the one that I tested both times when I took a look at it. But again, we do have the side-folding stock, which all these models did have. The next one we had was the 556 DMR. Basically, what the 556 DMR was a 21-inch barrel. They could have a flash hider or they could not. They sort of came both ways. And I've also seen those both with PRS-type stocks as well as standard M16M4 type receiver extension with M16M4 type stock assemblies on it. Sometimes they would have the iPod on them, but these were all the same adjustable gas systems, which made this rifle incredibly durable, reliable, and the ability to switch from suppressed to unsuppressed by the flick of a switch. The next one, and probably the most problematic part of this family of rifles, was the SIG 556R, which was chambered in 7.62 by 39mm Russian. It took AK magazines. Now, this rifle was plagued with durability and reliability problems from the beginning. And I do believe there was a recall on them as well. I know several guys who've had them in the past. Most of them have sent the guns back in for repair. But I think it was one that really was a thorn in SIG's side that they did discontinue because of those reliability issues. The SIG 556R was introduced in 2012. In 2014, the final version of the SIG 556 family came out. It was a SIG model 556XI, or Model 6, but it was referred to as XI. And how this really changed was the movement towards a modular rifle where you could change barrels, as well as having ambidextrous, which meant you had an ambidextrous charging handle as well. You could remove left or right. However, this was very, very short-lived because the introduction of the SIG MCX was basically everything the SIG 556 XI was supposed to be, and then some. So when the SIG 556 really truly saw its demise was with the event of the development and then the introduction of the SIG MCX series. The SIG 556 has been out of business for quite some time. The rifle still exists quite a bit today. You can still see them on Gunbroker. They're still in use. They've always been a very durable and very reliable rifle. We're going to go over this one from back to front and talk about some of the things that were really good about it and some of the things that were really bad about it. But this rifle was truly designed for the American market. Now, first off, the gas system was very unique to this series of rifle, having everything in the front. It was a proven system that had been around since the SIG 450 series or SIG 400 series. Let's take a look at this thing from the back to front, and we're going to see how everything works on it. Now, as we see here, we have a 7075 T6 aircraft-grade lower receiver on here. And also the magazine is a very big change as well. The original SIG 550s and all the models before utilized the proprietary SIG magazine. This utilizes a standard M16 or Stadag type magazine, where it was capable of taking any magazine the standard AR-15 M16 would. You have a hammer forged barrel on here. This is a 1 7-inch twist. You also have a flash suppressor. This is similar to that of the M16A2, with being more of a compensator. It has the bottom that's closed on it. It was chrome plated. Now, for as far as the stocks were concerned, we did see different kinds of stocks. This one here was a standard side folding, and it was also adjustable in and out. But we'd also see these things with an adapter, so you would be able to put a receiver extension on it from the M4, so you could utilize any of the modern M16 M4 type stocks. Weighed about 7.8 pounds, a length of 37 inches. Now, the barrel we have on here is a cold hammer forged barrel, button cut. We have 1 7-inch twist rifling for use of stabilizing any of the modern cartridges that go from 55 right up through 77 grain. We do have a nitride type finish, and we also have an A2 type compensator on here. There's a manual gas regulator with 2 settings, normal and harsh conditions. Now, the military rifles did have additional positions for suppressed and so forth. However, the one that was made for the commercial market did not. This also came out at a time that was a little bit earlier on where suppressors were not nearly as accessible as they are now. So I think any rifle that you see now is going to have setups for sound suppressors. Stamped steel upper receiver. Now, another addition that the SIG 556 family had was a bolt catch on it, or a bolt hold open device, where on the other SIG 550 series that did not happen. It was very much like an AK where you fired your last shot, the bolt would go forward, and all you'd hear was a click. When you pull the trigger, the bolt was empty. The original SIG 556s had no iron sights. It just came out with a rail that went across. The charging handle is reciprocating on this version. What we're going to do here is now we're going to go over disassembly and we're going to see how this thing works. First off, we're going to make sure that this thing is empty. Now, you'll also notice that we have basically pieces of rubber, right, which you see right here. What that does is it keeps all the dirt out of the inside of the action. Unlike an AK, when the safety is off, dirt can get inside of the receiver, and it'll clog the receiver and cause it to malfunction. This is pretty much all sealed up, so nothing can happen. So again, no brass, no ammo. Take our punch, hit the front and the rear. Now we're going to separate the upper and lower receiver. So we have a 775 T6 aircraft grade aluminum receiver. You can see our bolt catch right here. And the trigger on this, I'm not going to say is the greatest trigger I've ever shot. It does have that traditional trigger where you have a button that pushes in the side here to release, and you have a lot of trigger play in here. So the trigger is not necessarily the greatest trigger in the industry. It's definitely a military grade trigger. To swing the stock over, you push this button inward, and the stock just comes right over. You see, like so. Now to move it in and out, this is extremely difficult. This one is very, very stiff. You push in the latch in here, and that goes in, and you're safe and fire. It's a relatively large safety. It's sometimes somewhat difficult unless you have really, really large hands. I have large hands, and I have a little bit of a hard time actuating it as well. You have a compartment in the bottom of the pistol grip. Now for removal of the gas system, we have a lever, which you'll see right here on the bolt carrier itself. We push downward. We're going to pull that out. And we're just going to slide the bolt carrier group right back. As you can see, we have an AK style bolt. Very similar. So there's your carrier. You can see your cam track. Again, this is very much AK-like. Now to remove the gas system, we have a spring-loaded plunger right here. We'll pull back on that. And now we pull the gas system right out the front. We'll set this aside. Now we pull our recradle spring and operating rod right off. Now, one of the nice things about this system is everything is contained within this tube. Now, many of these type of systems, you have the recradle spring and the guide rod are in the open. There's nothing covering them, so any kind of trash or dirt that gets on will get directly onto the spring and the guide rod, which can cause malfunctions. By having everything enclosed in the tube like this, you are protecting everything. Now, if we look, we can see different gas ports. Now, granted, not all of these are utilized, but you'll see the gas ports that are changed for your adverse conditions, normal conditions, and we'll see plenty of gas relief holes as well. Now, looking at the guide rod, you can see as this fits in place, how it locks right into place. And on the bottom here, you can see this is where the gas is bled off into the system here. And this is your gas valve right here. And you can see there's two positions. You can see a smaller hole and a larger hole. Again, the smaller hole is normal use, and the larger hole is going to be for extreme measures, or if the pistol or the rifle is extremely dirty, needs to work. This is not a place you want to leave the rifle set on, due to the fact that if it's overgassed, you will beat the heck out of the system. This is only to be used under certain conditions. And with the receiver, as we spoke earlier, this is not the original handguard. This is a Troy handguard. It does have the mag pull vertical grip on here as well. So the maintenance is very, very minimal on these due to the fact that everything is internal. But like anything, it doesn't matter how well it's made, you're still going to have issues as far as cleaning is concerned. So you do have to maintain it contrary to popular belief. So to put everything back together, everything goes in like so. We're going to take the gas regulator. We're going to push in and we're going to rotate until this notch here is engaged by the spring-loaded plunger, just like that. Now we can adjust our gas position to whatever we need it to be. Now that's for easy release. Put back in, push in. So now, for reassembly of the bolt mechanism, just like that of an AK, we drop in, and you can see we have the cam slot, and then the cam rotate. Make sure it's in the unlock position. Insert from the rear. So we're going to be sure that's in the lock position. Push downward on the lock. Insert. And as you see, once everything's assembled, everything works properly. You can see all the spring tension. Again, all the recoil spring is up on the operating rod. It has nothing into the rear for reassembly. Make sure both of our pivot and takedown pin are out. Now you can see there's certainly some M16 in here as well as their own rifle. You can see by the way the front and rear takedown pins work that we have. That's very much M16-like. But we have the original operating mechanism on here. The Stenag magazines. The magazines that came with this rifle were SIG magazines. Now I will admit these are not the most durable magazines there are. I did have issues with these cycling with the rifle too. The magazines that were primarily used were I did use some Magpols. I did use some AWMs or Lancer AWMs, Advanced Warfighter magazines. Also, some of the OK Industries magazines. And the rifle worked beautifully. But these are two of the coupled magazines that, as you see here. Now, the optics, as we spoke earlier, 1.5 to 6. This particular model was one that was adopted by the U.S. military. That's going on their new DMR type rifles. Their new DMR rifles, the M1110C. This is the scope that's now being utilized on the M11C rifle by H&K. But of course, it's going to be it's going to be in a coyote tan color rather than this bluish color that this one is. Excellent optics. I've been using these SIG optics for quite some time. Very, very clear lenses. Very accurate. It's mounted on a Geisley mount. Geisley makes some of the nicest mounts in the industry. And I do want to take a little bit of a time to talk a little bit about the ammunition. The ammunition that I used to test this rifle with, for one of the reasons that I wanted to test it as a complete SIG weapon system, was the SIG Elite Performance ammunition and Elite Performance match ammunition. Now, SIG has their own manufacturing facility for small arms ammunition. In fact, you see throughout the gun shops, you'll see an entire line of their Elite Performance ammunition. You'll see the SIG Elite Performance ammunition. You will see it in 5.56 or 2.23. You'll see it in 308 Winchester, 300 Win Mag. You'll see it in pistol caliber ammunition, 9mm, 40, 45, 57 SIG, for instance. It's good target ammunition. Then we also have the Elite Performance ammunition, which is their match grade ammunition. And I've had a lot of good luck with the 77 grain OTM. It's been a very, very accurate rifle. This rifle was test fired with both of these. I put probably, I'd say 300 rounds of different types of ammunition through this thing without a single malfunction. But I think what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the range and we're going to see how it shoots. The best group of the day was 1.09 inches with the SIG 77 grain open tip match ammunition. Now, at 100 yards, that was very, very impressive with this rifle. Of course, the scope helped out quite a bit. Actually, I think if the trigger was a little bit different, a little bit better, it probably would have done better. So it was a lot. That was very, very impressive seeing, just over an inch with this thing. It is not designed as a sniper type rifle or a long range rifle, but especially with it being an external piston, it did really, really well. But all the rounds fired, with the exception of a couple issues with these magazines that it came with, the rifle worked very, very well. Now, this gun is not what I would say outdated. I still think there's some life in it. There are certainly guns that are probably a little bit better, just more of a track record. Keep in mind that the SIG 556 was never designed as a battle rifle. It was designed as a commercial rifle to be made in the United States. Is our access to the SIG 550 series, which is legendary. That's a gun I would like to review one of these days, but those are very, very rare, and they just cost an astronomical amount. But, this rifle was also made more modernized than most of the SIG 550 series because of the fact that you have the 1913 rails, you do have the magazine. Well, there is a lot to say about Stadag about being interchangeable with your allies. Now, with Swiss being a rifleman country as you have there, with everybody being equipped with military weapons, it's not as much of an issue to have proprietary stuff like the magazines. But when those troops end up going on peacekeeping missions, it's nice to have some kind of a compatibility with the soldiers that they're with. But here in the United States, being able to have the 5.56 AR-15 type magazine really was a big selling point for the rifle. The original SIG 550s, the magazines were very, very rare and very, very expensive. They were proprietary magazines, as I stated earlier. They were polymer. They were like a greenish polymer. They were a good magazine. There was not really any issues with them. But for a rifle coming into the United States, you'd have to have those magazines imported, which we had. The bans that were put in place, those magazines were hard to get. This was definitely a step in the right direction, making the barrel making everything a little bit more compact. This rifle here is as good as anything would be for the U.S. commercial market. But it just did not have the popularity that I think a lot of us expected it would. And the SIG 556, the nail was put in his coffin with the development of the SIG MCX. The MCX was doing everything that the 556 XI was going to do for as far as the changeable barrels and so forth. Even with a changeable barrel system on the original SIG 556 XI, you still had to have a gunsmith to do it. Where with the SIG MCX system, you didn't have to do that. You were able just to pop the two screws out and pull the barrel out and put a new one in. So, this was definitely an advancement of the 550 series. But, once the new technology came with the MCX, and the MCX is literally a military weapon. It was designed in 300 Blackout for military purposes. It's gone through all the testing, and it's certainly a modern weapon which people are using right now. It's a very popular rifle right now for special forces, for police all over the world. The SIG 556 is certainly a weapon I wish was still being procured. It's got that classic Swiss look to it that you just don't have. And those of us who would like to have those kind of SIG 550s, they are just so well out of reach. I mean, that's NFA prices when you start looking at $5,000 to $11,000 from the prices that I saw for those original ones. They're very, very well made rifle. They're Swiss. I mean, what do you expect to come out of Switzerland? But unfortunately, we're not going to ever really see in this country these types of rifles again. What's here is here, and what was made here is made here. There's not going to be any more. So it's certainly a weapon I think would still fit the idea of a collector's item. Something that I may consider at some point if I could find a nice. I've been looking for myself this one here with the SWAT Elite, which had the 1913 rails on it that was more modernized. Now, I will say I'd rather have the original stock on it than an M4 type stock. This is one of the things that they kept from the original SIG 550. It was the same thing with the front with the handguards. The original Classic had the same kind of a 550 polymer handguard on it versus the rail that came on the SWAT. You had the same kind of a barrel where you had just the smaller portion sticking out with a longer handguard. Unlike the 556 Patrol, which utilized a short handguard with a lot more of the barrel exposed, I tend to prefer the longer handguard with less barrel exposed. It gives you a lot more real estate to place any kind of accessories, optics, or vertical pistol grips, or whatever accessory that you would want. But I was very pleased with the reliability, the durability. It was everything that it was supposed to be. Definitely a handy little package. Using the proper magazines and a good optic, you have one hell of a rifle here. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave some comments. I'll try and get back to you. If you enjoy this video, please click like, please subscribe, and even better, share. Thank you.